I mean, we've obviously had this recall targeted against us, but in the last few days, my office has also received death threats from very specific death threats. And unfortunately, these seem to be coming from the email account of a Seattle firefighter, City of Seattle firefighter.
Wow.
And so,
actually, yeah, if you don't mind, I have some of the emails that you got just so people have a sense of what you were subjected to. Kshama, I can't believe you are still here. Are your people so dumb that you cannot get a clue even when we hit you in the face with it? I'm always all ears and hear everything. Get out of this city or else. I feel it best if you just leave town if you know it's good. You would know it's time to go. If you need help leaving, try jumping head first off the top floor of your building. I'll even come push you. Kshama, it's the new year and you have not listed your resignation. It is time for you to go, Ms. Councilwoman. If you don't willingly leave, we will make that decision for you by any means necessary. The time is here and you will not have a place after tomorrow, Councilwoman. Announce your resignation now or else.
I just meant to say that, I've been moved by the incredible outpouring of support and solidarity from every corner that we've received against these threats. People are horrified to hear about it, especially in the atmosphere of the rise of the far right, Trump threatening to build a new far right party, and right wing party, and, the attacks on the Capitol building in DC. So people, you got to be living under a rock if you're not worried about the rise of right populism. But again, deafening silence from city council members.
I know you've already been so generous. How much more time do you have? Because I know you have a recall to fight. But I can do this after you're gone.
I'll be honest, I'm loving this conversation. So if you want me to stay for a few minutes, I'm happy.
Great, thank you. Yeah. I actually wanted to ask you I have your letter opened. I don't know if you want to read any part of it, but I thought your response to this threat was really, if I've ever seen an example of when they go low, we go universal, solidarity, right? So this is the letter that you wrote. Can you just set this up, and then if there's any part you want to read, or I can read it, or this was in response, right, to the threatening emails you received?
Yes, this was the letter. I sent one public letter both to the mayor and the police chief and the fire chief, and I also included the president of the firefighters local union. But this is a letter I sent after that. I sent yesterday to the president of the firefighters local, Kenny Stewart, and I said, Brother Kenny, thank you for your email responding to the threats that have been directed at my office. As a fellow union member in AFT 1789, that's a teachers union that I'm a part of, I know you'll agree with me that the strength of the labor movement lies in the power of solidarity between us all as workers and our power in moving that solidarity into action. In the words of some of the proud sisters and brothers that helped build the labor movement in the very early days of the 19th and 20th centuries, an injury to one is an injury to all. I believe violent far-right views and threats have no place in our labor movement. And if you can just scroll
sure, of course.
down, I just want to read one other part of it.
Do I go down or up, or if you tell me the word, I can do an Apple F and find it.
Just go a little bit up. Yeah. Sorry. Where it says the billionaire class, that's the part I want.
Where is that?
Oh, there we are. I think the labor movement cannot afford to allow these ideas.
Yeah, that's where it is. If you just leave it there, yeah. What I was trying to point out is that the specific dangers of this kind of divisions inside the labor movement, where we don't present a united left alternative, that can actually end up leaving ordinary people as fodder for right populism. And the point I'm making in this letter is that one of the big reasons we have to reject these right-wing anti-worker ideas, including sexism and racism, is because the labor movement cannot afford to allow these ideas to gain ground, because they only serve to empower the billionaire class. They make it harder for us to unite against systemic inequality and to fight together to win the good standards of living all workers deserve. And I'm really glad you're sharing this letter, because I think contrary to making this about one person or one public figure, I think the truth is that the ruling class, the far right, they will go after one person because it's easier for them to go after one person, tear them down, and then hence weaken the movement. And that's why the onus is on us to actually remind people that this is not about one person, and that the ruling class has a history, and there's a history under capitalism where the most courageous and the most visible left leaders, labor leaders, the Trotskyists in the labor movement, and courageous people like Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Fred Hampton, these were all gone after, not because they feared just those individuals, but they feared the ideas they represent. I mean, it was no coincidence that MLK was assassinated at a time when he was recognizing that it's important to unite workers of all races because this is a war against poverty and capitalism, and that we need socialism. And so building this kind of solidarity is going to be absolutely crucial. It's also crucial for every single battle. I mean, look at the courageous, for example, Amazon warehouse workers in Alabama who are fighting to unionize now. And you just heard the shameless corporation now is trying to hold an in-person vote because they know it will depress turnout during COVID. But the point being
disgusting.
It's absolutely disgusting. But for any unionizing struggle, anybody who's fought to unionize their workplace will know the kind of solidarity you need to build among workers. So what does that mean? That means that the left, the leaders on the left, the socialist movement, we have to understand the strategy of uniting ordinary people and to understand how we can fight against specific oppressions while at the same time uniting people around working class demands that matter to all of us. I mean, that's the specific task at hand.
Yeah. And also, of course, Neil, we focus a lot on the show, and Chris Hedges does too, and Noam Chomsky, on how the neoliberal Democrats really foster the growth of the far right because they don't actually provide. And I'm not exonerating people, but who engage in the Capitol riots with the intent of being killing someone, but and not all of them did, honestly. And again, this is not me trying to romanticize the people who stormed it. But, the Dems, like if the Dems don't deliver, this is like if they don't provide an alternative, a socialist alternative, if you will, or at least, some kind of alternative, people do feel like they don't have anywhere to go. Not all of them, but yeah.
I mean, I would also say that our elected Democrats, have basically coddled this ideology up until it was Trump, and they were personally offended by him. You know what I mean? And I frankly worry that under the new Congress and Senate and Biden, that we're going to get right back to that sort of policy of appeasement. Already Biden has talked about nothing but coming together and reconciliation and all this kind of stuff. And I worry that we're just going to get back to okay, Trump is done, and so of course Ted Cruz is not as bad. You know what I mean? Kind of politics.
Yeah.
I think that's a very important question. I mean, the most crucial historic question of our times is over 70 million Americans voted for Donald Trump.
Right.
Unless somebody is making a serious argument, which they aren't, and they shouldn't because it would be ridiculous. But unless somebody's making a serious argument that they're all irredeemably reactionary, far right supporters, then the question is, what is the strategy to win the majority of them away from dangerous right-wing and right populist to begin with, but then more dangerously far-right reactionary ideas? The only way you can do that is by building a genuine left alternative. And that's the thing. I mean, the Biden administration obviously has announced a somewhat substantial COVID relief package. They're also talking about a $15 minimum wage. What this shows, of course, is a tremendous pressure that the Democratic Party is under, both with the expectation from ordinary people who, correctly are heaving a sigh of relief. Trump is gone, in that sense. And that the expectation that this new administration needs to stand in contrast with that disastrous and reactionary Trump regime. So this is putting a lot of pressure on the Democratic Party. And also, they're facing the pressure from the sheer scale of the crisis of capitalism that they are now going to be presiding over. But already, as you said, as Biden announced his plan, and as is characteristic of the Democratic establishment, he's already declared his willingness to compromise with the Republicans. So it's not guaranteed yet what exactly will be passed by Congress. I expect that the $15 minimum wage will face likely serious opposition from the ruling class. But more broadly, we would expect that while certainly needing to carry out a relief package, the Democratic establishment will not use their majorities to actually fight for ordinary people and will fail to resolve these, compounded crises facing most of America. And in this context, as they try to make working people pay for the crisis instead of big business, it is likely to increase the legitimacy of right populist ideas unless the left builds significant. And, so we need a fight for the demands, like you were saying, Katie, that have enormous majorities, not just among Democrats, but enormous majorities among Americans as a whole, including Republicans, like Medicare for all. We need a massive green jobs program, all of this funded by taxing Wall Street. And that would actually unite working class people.
Yeah, it's so incredible because all the things that you're saying are things that people dismiss as utopian or great ideas, but it just can't happen. And so it's so important to highlight like when people do this and how they do implement it. And so much of what there's this interesting division, right? Or maybe boring division, but I think it's somewhat important to look at, which is the disingenuous versus the versus people who just drink the Kool-Aid. And I don't even mean like that in a negative way. I mean, the entire media and political apparatus is constantly telling us that things like Medicare for all or, taxing corporations, that those are great ideas. They just can't happen, right? So you have some people knowing that they are great ideas. That you have some people knowing they can happen, and that's why they have to say they can't happen. But then you have some people who legit just hear that and assume that that's true. And so we have to be able to reach that second group by highlighting things, including your campaign. People are already asking how to support and donate to your campaign.
If they go to kshamasolidarity.org, it's very easy to donate online. And if you want to send a check, there's a PO box address as well. And absolutely, we need solidarity, financial contributions. Obviously, we don't have the money that the billionaire class has, which is the whole point. I mean, that's why this system is dysfunctional. But we absolutely want to build, as I said, independent campaigns against the billionaire class, which means that working people and people who believe in fighting against injustice have to donate to our campaigns.
Also, I do want to say that Julia Salazar, Noam Chomsky, Chris Hedges, they've all been on the Katie Halper show. So there you go. You got that Katie Halper show
Illustrious
solidarity
company.
Bump. Yeah, all of whom have, are defending Kshama. So, come back whenever. I know you're busy, but I want to, Kshama. The K is silent. Kshama. I want to, is it silent?
No problem. It's not actually silent, but you know what? Even Indians find it hard to say it. So
there you go.
Seriously, it doesn't matter.
I want to, speaking of which, I really would love to have, come back on. I'm so curious about your personal political evolution. Because it isn't about one person, but also these are teachable stories, right? Like, so I think it's important for people to, do you have, in a sentence, could you say how you arrived at your politics?
Well, I think it was the experience of growing up in India, seeing the contrast between just enormous wealth owned by a sliver of humanity and then contrasted with an ocean of poverty and oppression. And also understanding that, well, clearly the human society has reached, technologically speaking, reached a point where malnutrition, hunger, oppression does not need to exist. And it still exists. Clearly, it's systemic. That was the starting point of my journey towards understanding Marxism.
Also, big shout out the fact that you got Julia socialist. There's a lot of intra-left fighting, as everyone here knows. So you got a nice socialist, because Salazar is, of course, DSA. You're socialist alternative, so we can bridge this divide.
Oh, and I should mention Seattle DSA has, of course, endorsed our campaign, and they have also spoken out against the threats.
Oh yes, So.
Well, can I just add one thing? You played this important footage from Tacoma, and it's just unspeakable. I mentioned that last summer during the height of the George Floyd protests, my office and the Black Lives Matter movement, we won the first in the nation ban on police use and purchase of so-called crowd control weapons like tear gas and rubber bullets and blast balls. Well, under the pressure of the massive street protest, these Democrats were forced to vote yes on it. We won it unanimously. Do you know what they're getting ready to do on Tuesday? They're getting ready to completely dismantle that law with all kinds of loopholes, which basically is a gutting of the legislation. So this shows you why we have no time to lose to actually build a genuine working class alternative to the Democratic establishment.
And also shout out to your mayor who said something so amazing. What was it? It was like the police had turned off their body cams. And she said something about how, Seattle's always been progressive and they don't believe in the surveillance state. That was some excuse for like why the police had engaged in something and they turned off their body cams or their dash cams, which was like the most Orwellian, really. It was almost like a joke I would make in character.
Exactly. Sounds like a joke. I mean, she is Amazon's mayor. Right. She is Comcast's mayor, and she oversaw the incredible unleashing of tear gas and rubber bullets and blast balls on peaceful protesters actually, there was actually a grassroots recall against Mayor Durkin, which the Washington Supreme Court threw out. So it tells you that this recall system under capitalism is not actually about recalling politicians who have betrayed the interests of the majority of humanity. It's actually it's used as a weapon against the left.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, if I don't even know if I should say this, if this doesn't work out, what can we do? Like, what should we be doing? And what are you going to do?
Well, I think at this point, it is extremely crucial that everybody focus on defeating the recall. We can defeat the recall, but we will need to, again, have the same strategy that the only way we can fight back is by building solidarity on the ground and having a fighting strategy, not expecting that the establishment or the courts are going to be on your side.
Should people be making phone calls?
Right now, what we need is support for the Solidarity campaign in terms of financial contributions if you're outside Seattle. But if you want to help in other ways and you are outside Seattle, please send us an email to the campaign. We will absolutely contact you. We are not short of ideas of how things can be helped, even if you're not in Seattle. And, where most of our fundraisers right now are actually on Zoom because of COVID.
Of course, yeah. And the decision's going to be coming any minute now, right? From the court?
Yes. I mean, every Thursday, there's an expectation that the Supreme Court will deliver its ruling. It hasn't happened yet. But, that's why it's important that we launched the Solidarity campaign months ago, because we cannot just wait around for the Supreme Court. And also, we don't expect the Supreme Court to be on our side because these are institutions of capitalism.
Yeah, right. Of course. Well, thank you so much. And come back on again. Would love to have you on. There's so much I want to ask you about. So thank you. And the best of luck. And we'll stay on the story.
Thank you so much, Jack.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it.
Nice to talk to you. Yeah.
Wow. Was that not great, guys?
That was great. What a great guest.
What a great guest.